All right, we're on air. It is Thursday, November 1st, and this meeting is to check in on active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. Before we get into the product itself, a quick update from the Project Management Committee. Kevin, a couple weeks ago, asked us to evaluate our contrib licensing situation so that we could specifically support GPL3 and contrib if we needed to. We raised that to a vote for the PMC. Not all PMC members have voted on that, but we do already have a majority. So I think it's safe to say that the vote on that has passed. What we need to do in order to make that clear to people about what's going on is to update the documentation, for example, the README in the contrib group, so that everybody knows that they're allowed to use GPL3, and make it clear that our preference is still for GPL2, so that if a project gets slated for core, we can include it. A GPL3 project cannot be included in Backdrop core. Next up, we have a new contrib application from Megaphone John, who has ported the Nagios module. So it looks like there's a couple of outstanding tasks to get his module to adhere to our standards, including Git history from Drupal and adding a proper README and license file in there.
And also welcome Olaf as a newer member of
Hey!
Yeah.
Congratulations. About time.
Thank you.
All right. Also, in the world of contrib, we have a new project. The footnotes module has been ported in the last week. So thanks everybody for working on that. If you're interested in what's going on in backdropcms.org, we did talk a little bit about content in the last meeting for the last hour on community outreach. But I did want to mention that the module themes and layouts pages the search there is not currently working. And I have a task myself today to get the search fixed so that the results will come back in the right order. But there's a bunch of other changes that we want to get worked on there too. And those could take volunteer time if possible. The issue for that is number 442 in the backdropcms.org queue. And that's all I have for contributed project and website development tasks. So let's turn it over to Nate for Backdrop CMS itself.
All right, there's been a lot of activity. Yeah, I said before the meeting, it's been 2 weeks since I was last on a meeting, or since Jen and I were, since last week was Bad Camp. But thanks, Gregory, for doing a meeting last week solo. That was awesome. So let's run through the agenda here, which is probably going to be similar to Gregory's update last week anyway, but most of the activity looks like it's happened about 10 or 11 days ago. So we'll recap. Let's see. Actually, is this right? I think we're currently actually on, 1.11.3 exactly. 1.11.2 came out a couple of weeks ago. There was a security update for Drupal that we corresponded and made an update for Backdrop as well. And so if you have the opportunity, you should be updating your sites to Backdrop 1.11.2. And I think at that time, we also updated all of the upstreams for Pantheon and Platform and Docker and all of those things. So everything should be all up to date. 1.11.2 is the current release of Backdrop, and 1.11.3 is the next bug fix release that will be coming out once we have some issues corrected. So we've got a couple of regressions or things that could be tidied up since 1.11 was released. One of the new features in 1.11 was enhancements to the color module and to the basis theme to make it colorizable. And so we have two issues related to that. 3209, which is adding predefined color schemes for basis. This one, there hasn't been any recent updates there. Jen requested that we run the color schemes through an accessibility checker to make sure that the contrast is high enough for legibility purposes. And also we've been asking around for any designers to take a look at that issue and provide feedback on the color schemes that are specified. It would be worthwhile if we could reach out to Wes again to have him take a look at the color schemes. Wes, the original author of the basis theme, to get his input there. Let's see. We also have an issue with the color preview. It doesn't work correctly in Safari, and that issue is 3295. We don't have any current updates on that. I don't think there's even been any efforts to correct it thus far. But anyone looking for a moderately important issue to fix a bug, that would be appreciated to have a dev take the lead on that one. Let's see. Lastly, a regression. The new info status message affects the available updates page in a negative manner, puts a blue background on a table where it shouldn't. That issue, 3305, is currently RTBC. Thank you, everybody, for working together to resolve that issue. I think Opie saves the day in that one. Let me see.
There's another, before we move on, another bug that was, we finally identified steps to reproduce. That's issue 3223, and it has to do with an error message when using, in the installer, when using localhost, sorry, 127.0.0.1 instead of localhost, and it throws an error.
Let's see, that's 3223.
Yes, so that used to be a random or an issue that we couldn't reproduce. We finally managed to find what the culprit is. So we just need to fix it.
Okay, super. Yeah, this looks like it's been available for, or been open for a while. Hooray, I love it when we can figure things out. That's really interesting. You know, actually, it's really interesting. We had similar problems that, you know, recently we made it so that we're supposed to be trying both localhost and 127.0.0.1 and using the one that works. But it looks like maybe we're not checking for the failure condition quite correctly there. Okay. Yeah, it's things like this that make it so the installer throws fewer errors that are really valuable. Because I've been in so many workshops where it's just like the one weird thing with their local host. Just can't get through the installer. Okay. Thank you for that. Is there... Okay, so that's an issue that we have cause found, but we don't have any patch quite yet. Okay, I'm going to add this to the list. 3223. All right, let's see. Next up is 1.12. 1.12 will be the next minor release that will come out January 15th, 2019. Although it seems like that's still a little ways away, we are heading right into crazy holiday time. And if last year was any indication, that frequently means that kind of once Thanksgiving hits, things become a little nebulous. Sometimes we have like mad rushes of development work because people have lots of holiday. And sometimes people actually use their holiday like they're supposed to. And it's a nice quiet time in the world of Backdrop. But we have a number of things that have actually been in really, they're already in really strong position because there were things that were nearly completed in the last release. And of those, we will go over all of them. This one, not super solid, but still has a lot of progress, and that's automatic updates. Automatic updates, we've got a meta issue at 2018. I'll reiterate again that Backdrop 1.11, the current version, has the ability to update itself, but we disabled that ability in the user interface. And now it's been confirmed by myself and Gregory. I know you tried it out as well. Jeff probably also. Like, everybody's tried out updating their locals using the core self-updater mechanism with success, which is great. But the next step that we have is to expose that ability to update and potentially automate it, and that issue is 414. And Gregory, you were the last one to take a look at it. Could you give us an update on your findings there?
Yeah, sure. So there's a related issue, which is to remove the authorized PHP entirely. During my testing, and it depends on what you're using for local development, I guess. I was using a Bitbox, so I guess it was a permission issue. I just got the page where it asks for the FTP passwords. If were it for authorized PHP not to be there, I'm not sure what would have been like the errors thrown. So that's one thing that we need to test further. And then I found it to be relatively smooth. Other than that, just a few suggestions that I made with regards to simplifying the options or the user interface for it, just converting certain things to checkboxes or, radio buttons, and then hiding things via states, so to make the form less shorter, I guess, so that people scroll less. And then also we had a big description text, a rather long one, explaining what each level of security of each release does, explaining what patch releases, what minor releases, and what security releases are. So I thought that maybe this was better off as a set of radio buttons with the description for each thing underneath it. So yeah, other than that, just looks good. Just needs to be tested.
Great. Yeah, I'm still so excited. I'm still like just floored that that functionality is already in core, and that how close we are to making it totally possible. Jeff, do you want to provide any extra input on that, since you're the one that's been doing all the development work on automatic updates?
No, that sounds like a fair update. Does everybody want those radio buttons instead of what's there? I'm fine with changing it. I just don't want to change it and then have to change it again and again and again.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, so I can't really answer that right off.
All right. I'll just focus on the back end of making it work, and then we can get some consensus on the UI and the issue.
Great. Okay, let's see. Other issues related to automatic updates yet. Gregory, you noted remove authorized.php. That issue is not in the agenda, but last I looked at it, we had a pull request that kind of removed it from everywhere. And I was tempted to take it further, because there's also this entire set of classes for moving files around that is also used exclusively by authorized.php. So that's another subsystem that would basically not be used anywhere, and we could potentially deprecate that entire system as well. But I don't know, it got a little, it got more complicated when I started doing that, just because we do actually use that system in one place in update module when we do our own replacements, but we wouldn't really need to. It's that's the system that like arbitrarily lets you swap out like SSH versus FTP versus local file transfer, and we only use the local file transfer mechanism in installer module. So I don't know, some things that could potentially continue on there. Okay, let's carry on to other issues. Let's see, these other three issues that we have are all moving along nicely. Issue number 37, tags for modules. This has been reviewed by Gregory and then kicked back to needs work. Jen, I think you're the one that is taking the lead on doing tags for modules. So that one back to needs work. Option 1005, options element in core. This one is ready for review again. It's been re-rolled and updated. Everybody seems to express their extreme happiness with that particular pull request and that particular feature. It's ready for review. I don't think there are any outstanding issues with it. It's already gone through a couple of iterations and now is back looking for more eyeballs. And lastly, fieldable file types, issue 2632. There aren't any large updates on this issue. This makes it so that files become more like normal entities, that there's different types of them, like video and photo can be separated, and then files also become fieldable. No recent updates on this one. And it, I think, just generally needs more reviewing. There's nothing explicitly wrong with it that we know of. It's been reviewed a couple of times. It's a massive amount of code, but it looks really good. There are some questions about like how it should be represented in core. I also had a concern about it adds like an alt text field to images, for example, but then that isn't actually used anywhere. It can be a little, it's a little ambiguous as to how the image bundle like behaves differently than like the image widget for uploading an image, because you can specify an alt text in both places, for example, and the alt text on the image itself on the file entity doesn't really do anything. So we've got some questions there around how we should build this out as its core implementation. Let's see. And that's it for the 1.12 updates. There are other issues in the GitHub issue tracker for 1.12. You can check it out in the 1.12 milestone. With all the people present here today, is there anything else that we would like to bring up as an area of focus for 1.12?
Yeah, I have a recommendation. So I was looking at the certain libraries that we are shipping with core, and like jQuery mostly, and CK editor. We are a few versions behind, and I did file maybe 4 or 5 issues with regards to CK editor. Some of them might be for the 1.13 release, but one step forward would be to update to the latest version, which offers certain new features. And my overall question or thing that I would like to discuss is maybe say 1 month before its minor release, we we actually have an ongoing task that we actually update those libraries, and we have enough time to test it, so to make sure that it doesn't break things. But if we let a lot of releases like every 4 months and update libraries which are critical to how Backdrop and the UI operates, then we risk having way too many features or changes happening in between these versions. So I think that we should update more frequently. Like we should make sure that with each minor release we update to the latest if things don't break. And so one thing that I wanted to point out, I'm not sure if we can make for the 1.12, but CK editor now introduces sort of like a balloon tooltip, which is the equivalent of see how in Google Docs, for example, when you click on a link, there's a balloon with a link that allows you to edit it in place there.
Oh, nice.
Sort of like, yeah. So it's a nice addition. And then there was another one included called autocomplete plugin, which allows you to start typing hash or @, and then it finds usernames or people that you can mention or emojis. And I thought that maybe we could use that. Maybe there's not enough time for 1.12, but it could lay the ground for 1.13. And another thing that I filed as a question was that I've noticed in CK editor, like the actual .com, that there's a version of it called Inline. And it seems really similar to how D8 has its quick edit mode. And I didn't realize that this was a CK editor feature. I thought it was a D8 thing. So I would like us to discuss that. And for parity reasons, maybe we could offer it as an option. And it's not actually a screenshot. It's like if you go in ckeditor.com, the 4 version of it, it has a live demo there on the front page where you can switch it and just play with it.
Yeah, so the just carrying that thought through. So inline editing, like the current version of CK Editor that we have, supports inline editing, but it typically doesn't actually work that great because of input formats, like input filtering. And even in Drupal 8, it's the case that pretty much no inline editing actually edits directly inline. It actually, when you click in it, it AJAX requests and gets the raw HTML, because the front end version usually has been transformed by input filters before it gets to the front end. And then when you're editing that, you need the raw HTML that is stored in the database before it's transformed. And so inline editing doesn't work real great, even in Drupal 8, because it always has to go and get a backend version of the content. So you can't just click to edit. It actually has to click AJAX request, and then it puts in an inline one in the same location. So I don't know. It's still, possibly useful, but I don't know.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not for 1.12. We don't have time for that, but it lays the ground for, like with the features added in CK Editor, the newer versions, for such features to be added in May.
Yep. I've always kind of pushed back against the inline editing a little bit myself, but it is possible to do in Backdrop today. Could be a good contrib module too. Like, that's totally possible.
Yeah, even that, just so that people don't say, hey, we have this in D8 and you don't have it. It's like, just less excuses for people using Backdrop. That's what I say.
Yeah, I do really like this inline, the balloon thing. I think that's quite handy. I wonder if it's possible to, oh, interesting, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So
even
the
in
whole
image captions everywhere.
Yeah, the whole toolbar disappears, and then it's just when you click around. Huh.
Oh no, it doesn't disappear. Like in the demos that I have used, the toolbar is there. It's just it's a small pop-up as well in the element that you have clicked, presenting just the buttons that are relevant to that element.
Yeah, that looks handy. Well, anyway, what we've also done in previous versions is sometimes we update to the new version of CK Editor, but we don't actually use the new features in it yet. So we update to the new version to make sure that we don't break things. And then in the next minor release, we usually actually use the enhancements that were added. That happened with upload progress, for example, and inline, like copy paste, like we added the versions of CK Editor that supported those features, but we didn't actually integrate them until the subsequent release. So yeah, that is a good point. We always have that issue of make sure our libraries are up to date. And like you point out, Greg, sometimes we don't do them until like almost immediately before. And it would be better in many cases if we updated them more incrementally throughout the minor release cycle.
So there's a lot of people just testing various pull requests in the sandboxes, which makes it a good chance if things are merged, say a month before, if there's good chances that if there are breakages, they will be discovered, or more of them will be discovered. That's why I was mentioning it. And the other thing is that I was thinking that in the descriptions of these ongoing tickets, maybe we should add, because these this is JavaScript and we don't have tests for it. So I would like us to add steps in the issue summary, that tests that need to be repeated every time that we update the library to make things that make sure that things that haven't been broken. So yeah, I would like some help with that, compiling the list of what needs to be tested for jQuery and for CK Editor. I think, Nate, you mentioned in the past that there is a list somewhere. Like, I'm not sure if you have it written down somewhere, but at some point you pointed out during one of the jQuery updates that sort of like a list of 5 or 10 items that needed to be tested. That would be really handy. And then one final question related to CK Editor is, I was checking the changelog because I did file a pull request to update it. So it seems that we are not using the native, what is it called, URL, the plugin that converts URLs to links, like actual. We're using our own implementation, and there was a point in the changelog that said that this plugin now supports linkifying emails as well. I'm not sure if that was the reason why we were not using the native one. I'm just mentioning it.
Yeah, I don't think we have. I'm not quite sure why we're not using it. I think it's just because we still have automatic creating of links happening at the filter level instead of at the text editor level. Honestly, I think it would be better at the text editor level. Like that idea of automatic linking stuff is, based upon an era where we didn't have a rich text editor at all, and it was like convenient. So I think it'd be better if the text editor did it for you.
Yeah, and it can still be an option, right? Like it can still be a setting, but just not handled by, say, custom Backdrop CMS core. It will be handled as a sort of like a setting for CK editor, right?
Yeah.
And if we do it, if we implement it that way, we this way inherit any features added in the future. Like everything that is native is better, I guess, maintained upstream.
Okay, awesome. That's it for the 1.12 update. Let's see, we've got a Backdrop for Good update here. Jeff, do you want to mention any progress or things that have been happening in that world?
I saw Larry in Hack for Western Mass communicating back and forth and doing some things. I wasn't involved, but I know there's motion. And as always, if anyone's interested in checking out Backdrop and from a development perspective, there's some issues there that might help you have a use case.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's move into general discussion and Q&A. If there's anything that we'd like to discuss on the air, if you guys have anything you'd like to ask.
In the installer module, there's a file called installer.authorize.include. Does that have nothing to do with authorize.php and just coincidentally has a similar name?
Sorry, Jeff. I was answering a question in Gitter. What was that?
In the installer module, there's a file called installer.authorize.include. Does that have nothing to do with authorize.php and it's just a similar name?
I think it does, actually. I think that it's got a lot of stuff that isn't related to authorize.php in there, but it's the one that is responsible for actually moving the files around, I think. But
that's definitely used in the updates to the UI.
Yeah, that file is heavily used by the installer module, but it doesn't actually make extensive use of authorize.php, which is weird. So
okay, thank you.
Let's see. There's a question here in the agenda about contrib security updates. Probably relevant because there were some security updates just yesterday. It's confusing to deal with security updates for contrib, probably for core actually too. The way that we currently manage security updates is that we cut the security release. We publish the security announcement on backdropcms.org. But then there's one special trick that a lot of people miss when doing security releases, and that is after the security release is created on GitHub, a project release node is created on backdropcms.org, and then you have to edit that node and check the box for, is this a security update? And that turns on the flag in update module that makes it so that it says, there's a critical security update for your site on the status report page. So 2 questions here, 2 comments. How do we document that? Like, how can we make that easier for people to find how to do that process? And secondly, like, could we make that entire process easier? to make it so that maybe the documentation wouldn't be so necessary, or would be more intuitive to do that. I'm guessing, Jen, you may have added these things. Do you want to elaborate any further on these questions? No?
I can say a few things.
Okay, go ahead.
So the reason why this was added in the previous dev meeting was that I discovered that 2 modules that actually were supposed to be security releases have not been marked as such. And I think one of them was web form or something. So the main issue with that is that people that are ignoring regular updates and only do the security updates would not have picked up that there is actually a security update. And I think that we can document that somewhere in the contrib README MD file that says how you can move things around, but it can easily be forgotten. So I thought that maybe, see how we have templates for GitHub issues? When you create a new issue, there's a template being created. I would like to see if there's an option to add a template when you are actually creating a release that says, hey, if this is a security release, don't forget, log in, or have someone log in b.org and mark it as a security release. I did some research. I couldn't find anything related. But my point is that documentation is good, and I'm sure that people will read it, and some of them will keep it in mind, but some will forget. So I'm trying to figure out a way to sort of like with each release say, hey, is this a security release? In case, if that's the case, then you need to do an extra step.
Yeah, great question. That would be really helpful if we could do that at the GitHub level. I haven't heard of something like that before, but I hadn't really seen issue templates used the way that we use them now either. So it might be possible. Which, by the way, I really like our issue templates. That comment section that's down at the bottom that says, you know, like if this is a security issue, that's like magic.
Sometimes I'm complicating things in my head because I don't know how these things work. But the other idea was that it's if we have the maintainer of a specific module as an actual field or in b.org, with each creation of a release, we can send an email. I know it could be annoying and saying, hey, by the way, was that a security release? That would be another way. But yeah, just brainstorming.
Yeah, I still think we need to get the GitHub single sign-on working before we can do that, so that we can tie the username on backdropcms.org to the username on GitHub. But we need that anyway. And I think Kevin did some work on that too. So, or at least the synchronization between GitHub and a backdrop site. So we should take a look at that and see if we can use that on backdropcms.org yet, or what our blockers are.
Yep. Okay. Let's call it. I feel like we've been doing backdrop meetings for 2 solid hours now almost. So thank you everybody for joining these meetings as always. See you guys again on the internet, and just keep on backdropping. So bye guys.